So in this video, Jesper and his daughter build a cabin in their backyard.
We are not as far with the cabin build as we thought we would be at this point, and winter is approaching really fast. There is no way that the raw frame and the flooring can survive the rainy and snowy part of the year, and the tarps that we try to cover it with just seem to rip apart in the strong winds. So the main focus and priority is to get the cabin frame covered with a roof and some walls. Our plan for the roof is to use these 5 metal roofing sheets that I found on my dad's property when I unfortunately was cleaning it out for him. They should just be able to cover the area of the roof. The plan for the siding is to simply cut off more of these noble fir logs into cladding boards. That is just a rough log sawn into boards that is 2 to 3 cm in thickness, with the edges intact on both sides. In Denmark we call them Kalmar boards. And then we mount the boards horizontally on all sides, overlapping each other. But these are just rough plans, and rough plans rarely turn out as planned. I had a full month just laying on the floor in my office because my sciatic nerve got stuck somewhere inside my pelvis. I couldn't walk or stand, but I started doing yoga and slowly unwinded that sciatic nerve again. But while lying on the floor, I thought about the metal roofing. It gets really hot with the sun shining down on it and really cold during the winter. And winter is coming. When it rains, the raindrops make a huge noise hitting the metal roofing. Julia talked about getting a living green roof on the cabin, but that's very heavy and also very expensive to install, with all the waterproofing and root barriers needed. And guess what? You can't have it close to other buildings due to the fire hazard in the dry season. So, while laying there on the floor without being able to cut up the noble firs or much else, I remembered that I had gotten some big plywood sheets from my dad's place, and one of them I had already used to make a form for my pallet blocks river table. Yeah, I made one of those. So, if I just had enough of those to put on as roofing under whatever I could put on top, and perhaps even put it on as siding too, that would make it super sturdy. But I also knew I wouldn't have nearly enough, so I started researching plywood laying there on the floor. ChatGPT suggested that the most environmentally sustainable plywood on the whole planet was being produced in my backyard, in the forests of Finland. I'll get into the details of how I ended up having a meeting with this plywood company in a bit. But when I finally got back up on my feet again, there were 2 pallets of plywood magically appearing in my driveway, along with a note saying, "We love your cabin project with your daughter and we would like to support it." Wow, that's amazing. I could do that. Now, this generous donation meant that we could seriously up our cabin building game. I'm not talking about Julia's ambitions here. She might have had skyscraper dreams compared to my modest shack aspirations. Protecting the flooring from water is our biggest priority, so putting up the roof first is the first priority. So here's a little montage of us putting up these half sheets of mold-protected spruce plywood sheets. My initial goal was pretty simple. Get a floor going, some framing, put a roof on, and slap on some outside wall cladding. The inside stuff like insulation and walls, that was future Jesper's problem. Essentially, it was going to be a summer cabin, great at keeping out rain and bigger animals, but also a 5-star hotel for wind and smaller critters. But thanks to this plywood fairy godmother, our little cabin dreams just got a big upgrade. And by upgrade I mean that we might actually survive the winter without turning into popsicles. As we were making progress, Julia received some exciting news for her. An opportunity to study in Italy again that she couldn't or wouldn't pass up. But with the weather turning worse, I had to step up and secure the roof on my own. And that is perfectly fine. I love working on my own. I think. Up on a roof? Really? Did you leave me up on a roof? Alone? Hello?
To see father-daughter work together to build something that the daughter primarily makes. You know, Jesper's kind of just a grunt labor.
She's the brains in this, for sure.
Yeah.
With Julia off to Italy and dark clouds rolling in, I had to shift gears. The bad weather was coming fast, and I needed to make sure our hard work didn't get washed away. And by hard work, I mean that flooring. The fastest way to make the roof waterproof in a rush was to put up some underroofing on top of the plywood sheets. I found a couple of rolls of underroofing from when I cleaned out my dad's place. Thank you, Dad. At the time, I had no idea what was in those rolls, but after reading a bit up on it, thanks ChatGPT, I found out that underroofing is a waterproof barrier that is often used under the roof itself as an extra layer of protection, and it can act as the top of the roof for a few months with no problem. So I decided to put these rolls on to protect the cabin from whatever was coming my way. But I also found out that it is pretty hard to put up in the current hard winds that we were having here. I looked at how Bo Miles fixed the roof on his cabin, and to me it looks like he's putting up some sort of tarp as the underroof, and then some metal sheets directly on top. Metal roofing sheets are great for durability and for weather resistance, but they have some drawbacks if used without an underroof. First, metal is a great conductor of heat and also cold, which means without an insulation layer, the cabin would be like an oven in the summer and a freezer in the winter, making it very uncomfortable. Additionally, metal roofs can be quite noisy. Every raindrop, hailstone or gust of wind can create a lot of noise inside the cabin. An underroof layer helps dampen those sounds, making the cabin much quieter and more pleasant to live in. And if that wasn't enough, condensation can be a big issue with metal roofs. When the hot air inside the cabin hits the cold metal roof, it causes moisture to form, leading to potential water damage and mold. The underroofing acts as a barrier to prevent condensation from causing issues inside the cabin. With the underroofing in place, thank God, we entered into December and January, the darkest and coldest months of the year. Julia got back from Italy, thank God, but the days that we could work on the cabin were quite frankly limited. The sun at this time of year barely kisses the horizon, casting long shadows over our project, and time seems to move as slowly as the ice forming on the nearby lake. We had snow and frost and storms, and then more snow and more frost and even more storms. The days quite frankly blurred together, marked by the shifting of light and dark, the relentless grip of winter tightening around us. In those brief moments where the weather relented, I seized the opportunity to do a little work. I ventured outside where the tools lay buried under snow and a bucket of water had turned into solid ice. I started putting up a wind barrier, something that I found in my own barn, not my dad's barn, that were leftovers from another project. The wind howled and the storm clouds kept rolling in, so it seemed, and I just kept saying to myself that even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. It was a reminder that despite the harsh conditions, progress could be made, a little progress sometimes, and the promise of some warm light was just behind the horizon. I hope so. So I was just happy that I was on my feet again and that we were able to go outside a few hours every day and work a little bit until our fingers started to freeze too much. It is almost impossible to hold tools and screws with thick gloves on. But despite the challenges, we managed to make some progress on the cabin. And one crucial step was creating a 2 cm spacing between the wind barrier and the outer layer of plywood, using strips I cut from the same plywood boards. This spacing might seem like a small detail, but I promise you that is quite essential. The gap allows for proper ventilation, preventing moisture buildup and associated risks of mold and rot. I have said this so many times. Why do I keep writing about mold and rot in this script? You know this already. I don't have to repeat myself. Come on, man. Who wrote this script? Oh, I did. Okay, let's move on. I'm just so grateful for the plywood donation. That's really making the cabin a full year cabin. Wood itself is a fantastic material, but I guess you know that I believe that by now. So we are not only putting a sheet of plywood on the outside, we are also sawing up the remaining of the noble firs and mounting them on the plywood on the outside. We're also looking to put some kind of insulation material inside the timber framing, and lastly also a layer of wood on the inside. That's a lot of wood. We don't have enough insulation material, but something will happen soon, I promise. Like a small disaster in another house, from which this cabin will benefit. Oh shit, that's my house. Do you know the kind of project where you start out thinking, this will be done in a few months, we'll spend almost no money, and we'll just do it like Bo Miles. We'll be running back and forth a few times with a wheelbarrow, and we also have no baby to tend to unlike Bo, so this will be done before we know about it. Well, it turns out that Bo Miles is a smart guy. He set a tight deadline and then he stopped building. We didn't get that memo because we're still building. We had breaks and breakdowns and probably got a little too carried away into the project. It's no longer just a shelter. It's become a bit of an obsession. At one point, I found myself fixating on the metal sheets I planned on using for the roofs. Imagine the noise during rainstorms and the potential for condensation during the very hot and cold periods. In my head, the cabin was already rotted away due to condensation. I promise I won't mention condensation anymore. Unless... So naturally, I started researching alternative roofing options. Fiber cement seemed promising, but then I remembered the idea that Julia had about the green roof. How cool would that be, right? Until I discovered that a green roof is crazy expensive. It is like trying to grow a garden on top of a closet. It requires a ton of underroofing and different barriers. And get this, it is also a fire hazard during the dry periods. It couldn't be close to the other buildings due to the approval of the insurance company and the fire department. And that was the final nail in the green roof coffin. After abandoning the eco-friendly dream, I called around to my local suppliers and surprise, I got a really good deal on some fiber cement roofing. So fiber cement it is. Durable, low maintenance, low price, and it won't turn our cabin into an impromptu drum kit during storms. Plus, it is less likely to spontaneously combust, which is always a bonus. Thank you, fiber cement. It was still January and still cold as but then miraculously the rain and the wind decided to take a vacation somewhere else. Because for a few glorious days the sun peeked through the clouds and smiled down on our little project, and we finally got some work done. Julia took charge of the plywood work, while I tackled the task of putting up the fiber cement roofing. In a sweet twist of fate, we even mounted a door that originally came from Julia's grandmother's house. This door has seen generations pass through it. My wife, Julia's mother, spent her childhood opening and closing this door countless times. Seeing it now in this cabin was like seeing her childhood passing by. Quite a nostalgic experience. The markings and stickers on this door continue to whisper tales of past winters, summers, journeys, childhood adventures and family memories. And now we are adding a new chapter to the story of this door. I also had an old window from my workshop that we had planned to go onto the wall facing the lake. So, one day when Julia wasn't home, I decided that it was window time. We continued to put plywood up. One advantage of working two people with only one set of tools is that we constantly steal either the drill or the circular saw from each other. So I figured I'd better get started doing something else. So I started putting up the second layer of wood right away. But we would also really soon discover an issue that would set us back quite a bit, at least in our pride. Oh no, what can that be? But for now we don't know anything about that, so I'm cutting the cladding boards to length, and Julia went insulation foam maniac and filling up all the small gaps with foam.
Mine is from one of my favorite channels from Denmark, Jesper Makes. It's spelled Jesper, but that's not how you say it in Danish. It's Jesper. Jesper Makes. Building a cabin with my daughter, it's a good video, I promise. That is actually in the title.
Yeah.
Building a cabin with my daughter, it's a good video, I promise. That's how you know it's good.
Mm-hmm.
when
There's
the
the key
title
to success.
actually says it's exactly. It's a good video, I promise. Jesper and his daughter build a cabin in their backyard, which is like a giant field. He looks like he has like a whole farm or a really big piece of land. And they decide to build this as inexpensively as possible. So they use like pallet wood, they use like reclaimed flooring, they even use like some fallen logs, some fallen black alder from the woods behind their house. At one point, they go like help somebody down the road, like harvest part of a Christmas tree farm, and I think they pull some dead fur out of that.
Yeah.
And he has a little sawmill, and this is great because, you know, a lot of times when you have a father, daughter, or a woodworker and a kid, you know, they might let the kid, you know, like glue something or paintbrush something. Mm-hmm. He's hauling logs while she's running this giant sawmill. Yeah. This kid, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's pushing this blade, you know, while he's out there hauling logs because he can only haul them one at a time, right? So he's hauling them through the woods and she's running the sawmill, and that's great. I mean, he let her do everything. She's driving screws, she's hammering stuff,
and she designed the thing. Like she's the architect as well.
She designed it, and then he built the prototype. Yeah, that absolutely. And it's not a step it's not really a step-by-step video. So he talks about like some of the techniques they use, but he weaves a story all the way through it, and he is a master at this.
Yes.
We worked day and night, and I got off to a pretty good start with the wall paneling.
The master at this.
But then came a massive shower from above, like a sign that showed us a giant construction error that we made last summer.
Yes.
And some people have already figured it out in the comments. Something that we had no other choice than to fix. And because I'm a YouTuber, at least that is what other people are saying, I embraced this moment and thought I had to do this interview style with myself and talk to the camera kind of thing, where I break down. And very apparently, I'm not a very good YouTuber, because this was my talk to camera confession breakdown. And I don't think you will learn anything from my lousy acting here, except perhaps trying to avoid that kind of YouTubers in the future. So let me just try to explain what happened. We built a floor as one big platform. But then we put up some walls, dividing this platform into an inside and an outside part. And I guess you can see where this is going, because with the flooring directly connected underneath, that's a really bad idea. We essentially made a landing platform for rain, where the only escape is to run alongside the board's tongue and groove and into the cabin itself. Oh God, see the wet spots inside here. This is a highway for rain. And this YouTuber didn't figure it out. But then I remembered the old saying from ancient times, or maybe it was Adventure Time, that sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. So I did a bit of reverse engineering, took down the freshly mounted cladding boards, unscrewed the flooring boards, had a board meeting about the boards before onboarding a sip of coffee, for then grabbing the circular saw and literally cutting off the water transportation highway boards. A circular saw has this very annoying foot blade that prevents it from cutting completely up against the wall here. So to solve this, I have found my father's good old precision woodworking tool to finish the job. Thanks, Dad. I mounted the cladding boards again, but now with the lowest board covering the end grain from the flooring. That's smart. And I used the wheat burner to dry the base, for then just to splash some DuroGrit on, cut the tongue and groove off on the table saw, for then just to screw them, the flooring boards right back on again. Now with a pencil width of spacing between them on all sides. We all need our personal space, I guess. Or just space for water to drain. You dumb YouTuber. So while I was fumbling around on the outside, Julia actually made some pretty good progress on the inside, insulating the cabin. And as you can see from my confession video, we had stacked some insulation bats up here. Where did they come from, you may ask? Oh, the joy of multitasking home improvement disasters. Thank you for asking. You see, while building the cabin, and by I mean my wife of course, also had the brilliant idea to paint the ceiling in our main house. But surprise, surprise, the boards were hanging low in some spots. So naturally I turned on the camera and I took some of them down, only to discover that beneath 2 layers of lowered ceiling was the original 100-year-old reed plaster, cracked and sagging like my self-esteem after way too many DIY projects gone wrong. Deciding that I clearly hadn't enough on my plate already, and to add some spice to my otherwise bland life, I tore down the lowered ceilings, including the insulation bats they used in past times. And in a stroke of pure genius or just laziness, I carried them directly down into the cabin. So there you have it, locally sourced, reclaimed building materials. Or just carrying one disaster into another. You are probably wondering what the heck happened inside the main house. Well, let's just say that some structural timber from the 1800s decided that their shit was over. Our first floor was about to become very close friends with the main floor. Just a minor case of historic architecture giving up on life, and I'll probably make a separate video on that little adventure. So stay tuned for more DIY. While I was messing around with the ceiling in the main house, Julia did some real work on the cabin. Using different kinds of reclaimed insulation bats, she insulated the walls and the roof. And I didn't catch much of it on camera, unfortunately. She works shorter periods, but she is very stable and works every day, and I was sort of busy trying to prevent our main house from collapsing. With a roof that has proved waterproof so far, get it? A door and a window, and now also insulation, this little structure has definitely moved from being a shelter to being an all-year cabin. Like, you could stay here during the winter if you wanted. So, while I was knee-deep in the ceiling crisis in the main house, Julia was over at the cabin cutting plywood for the interior. She got her hands on my Festool track saw, and let me tell you, she has become a master with that thing. Julia tackled all the different walls and roof pieces, even the funny angles, like a pro. That tool is brilliant. Now, I must admit, the footage I have is mostly with me in it too, helping Julia out. That is just because Julia doesn't start up the camera when she goes to work. But sometimes I drop by with a camera and get roped into lending a hand. I promise she did all the interior paneling. And if you're tackling a project like this, get yourself a track saw. We managed to get through the winter without any permanent damage to the cabin. The inside is pretty much done thanks to Julia's work with the spruce plywood, the track saw, and a layer of Rubio monocoat. In that regard, we owe a big thanks both to Rubio monocoat, but especially also to Visa Plywood in Finland for providing both the interior ply here and also the exterior plywood we used for the roof and the outside walls. And I'm so grateful for my newfound friends in Finland. I continued cutting up logs to mount as the outer layer of the cabin, the layer that will take all the beating from the elements. This cabin is part of a bigger plan, a plan that involves not working 9 to 5 in an office like ever, a more spiritual plan connected to nature. I will get into that in a future video. You may have been wondering who was the two guys talking about our first cabin video. That was Jared and Lee running the podcast, The New Cranky Workshop. And here's a few takeaways from their talk about our little cabin.
You know, he really gets his daughter involved. It's really about building a relationship with his daughter and creating memories. I mean, my father's gone now, but the stuff that I remember was him taking me fishing, him letting me work on the house with him. I mean, that's the stuff I remember about my dad. The stuff that we did together, you know? Yeah. So she will remember that long after he's gone. And hopefully it'll be something that she continues for the rest of her life and passes on to her kids. Because we need that.